Got a lot to cover: stories of prophets, key Islamic teachings,
This is fascinating.
even some insights into what it means to be human.
I'm excited for this one.
Me too! And luckily, we've got our expert here to help us connect all the dots.
I'm happy to be here.
So right off the bat in Surah 2,
Okay.
this idea of believing in the unseen really jumped out at me.
Mm-hmm.
It sets the stage for a faith that goes beyond
Yeah.
what we can see and touch,
It's really interesting how it's presented. It's not blind faith.
right?
It's linked to actions like prayer and charity.
I see.
It's about aligning your beliefs with how you live.
So it's more holistic, you're saying?
Exactly. Integrating inner beliefs with outward actions.
I like that.
And all throughout these excerpts,
Okay.
there's this constant emphasis on Allah's mercy, forgiveness, and justice.
I noticed that too. Even when there are verses about fighting in the cause of Allah, like in
Mhm.
Surah 2, it's clearly not promoting aggression.
That's a really important point.
Yeah.
The Quran is very clear about when fighting is allowed.
Okay.
It's only in self-defense when Muslims are being attacked.
So there are boundaries even in those situations.
Absolutely.
Interesting.
It's about protecting the community,
Right.
not seeking out conflict or being aggressive.
Okay, so even in warfare, there's a strong ethical framework.
Exactly. Proportionality is key,
Gotcha.
and transgression is forbidden.
Makes sense. Now, shifting gears a bit,
Sure.
I found the inheritance laws in Surah 4 pretty detailed. Like, for instance, it mentions a brother inheriting from a deceased sister who has no children.
Uh-huh.
Why such specific instructions?
It's all about social justice,
Okay.
creating fairness and safeguarding the vulnerable,
So like women and orphans.
especially after a loss, yes.
So it's not just about dividing property then?
No, it's about assistive care and support
I see.
to minimize disputes, maintain harmony.
That makes sense.
Everyone knows their rights and responsibilities.
Speaking of maintaining harmony,
Yeah.
let's move on to the stories of the prophets.
All right.
What stood out to you about those?
Well, first of all, the Quran is full of them.
Yeah.
Moses, David, Noah, Joseph,
It's a pretty impressive list.
even Luqman advising his son. Why are these stories so important?
Right. Why are they so prominent?
They're more than just historical accounts.
Okay.
They're packed with lessons meant to inspire and teach.
So like take the story of Moses and the Israelites in Surah 2.
Okay.
It really highlights their covenant with Allah
Yes.
and what happens when they disobey.
Right.
What can we learn from that?
Well, it's a reminder that even those chosen by Allah
Mm-hmm.
can stumble. Imagine leading your people through the desert
Oh, wow.
for 40 years, facing doubt and rebellion constantly.
That's a long time.
Moses' story teaches us about humility, seeking forgiveness, staying strong in our faith.
Yeah, even when things get tough.
Even when challenged, yes.
So it's a reminder that leadership isn't easy.
For anyone, not even a prophet.
Exactly. And then there's that classic story
Which one?
of David defeating Goliath in Surah 2.
Yeah.
What spiritual lesson stood out to you there?
Oh, that's all about faith and courage,
Mm-hmm.
facing these impossible obstacles.
Yeah, Goliath was huge.
David's victory reminds us that even the impossible can be overcome
Right.
with faith and trust in Allah.
That's powerful.
It is.
Now, the story of Noah and the flood in Surah 11.
Mm-hmm.
Always been fascinated by that one.
Yeah.
Really highlights what happens
What happens when we what?
when we reject Allah's message.
It's a reminder of divine justice, for sure.
Right.
A warning about what can happen when we ignore the prophets.
Yeah, and turn away from Allah.
But there's hope too.
There is.
The ark is a symbol of salvation,
Oh, I see.
a new beginning for those who stayed faithful.
So Noah's story shows both divine justice and mercy.
You got it. Consequences for those who reject faith,
Okay.
but Allah's mercy is always there for those who repent.
Then there's the story of Joseph in Surah 12.
Mm-hmm.
His brothers betray him.
Right.
He goes through so much hardship.
So much.
But ultimately, he finds success
He does.
and forgives his family.
It's an incredible story.
What stands out to you in that one?
The power of forgiveness
Uh-huh.
and trusting in Allah's plan.
Mm-hmm.
Even facing betrayal, hardship, injustice.
He never lost his faith.
Never. He teaches us that forgiveness is not weakness.
Interesting.
It's about reclaiming your power in tough situations.
Okay.
And it reminds us that even in dark times, Allah has a plan.
Even when we can't see it.
Exactly.
Wow. And then we have Luqman
Yes.
offering advice to his son in Surah 31.
Good old Luqman, full of wisdom.
What's the main takeaway there?
Humility, recognizing the limits of our understanding.
We don't have all the answers.
We don't turn to Allah for guidance,
Especially when things are complex.
especially then.
What I find interesting is how these excerpts show human nature,
Uh-huh.
our constant struggle against negative influences.
It's insightful, isn't it?
It is the Quran's portrayal of human nature. I mean,
What about it?
it's incredibly realistic.
It is. It acknowledges our capacity for both good and evil,
Yeah,
our tendency towards arrogance,
making excuses for our flaws.
right? and how easily we're tempted.
Like Surah 9, for example,
Okay.
really dives into hypocrisy.
It does. It's a reminder that true faith
Go on.
is about aligning our inner beliefs with our actions.
Being authentic in our faith.
Exactly. And striving for genuine righteousness.
So if we're all prone to these weaknesses,
We are.
how do we navigate this battle between good and evil?
Well, the Quran offers guidance.
Does it?
It emphasizes seeking Allah's forgiveness,
Okay.
relying on His guidance,
I see.
continuously striving to stay on the right path.
It's a journey.
It is a lifelong journey of self-improvement.
And drawing closer to Allah.
That's it.
It's a reminder that faith isn't static.
Mm-hmm.
It's about continuous growth and refinement.
Exactly. Recognizing our imperfections
Seeking forgiveness.
and trying to become better versions of ourselves.
I love that. Now, amidst all these teachings, the
Yeah.
Quran also has these intriguing details,
Like what?
like the description of paradise in Surah 2.
Oh, yes.
It's painted as this beautiful place full of delight
Uh-huh.
where even the familiar feels extraordinary.
It's meant to inspire and motivate.
Yeah.
It offers a glimpse into the reward for those who believe.
And do good deeds.
Exactly. It's a reminder that our actions in this life have eternal consequences.
Then there's that part in Surah 4
What part?
about Allah speaking directly to Moses,
Right.
giving him the title Kareem Allah.
Meaning the one to whom Allah spoke.
Right. What's the significance of that?
It shows his special status among the prophets.
I see.
He received the Torah,
Right.
led the Israelites out of slavery in Egypt.
Powerful stuff.
This direct dialogue with Allah reinforces his role as a messenger,
It adds a new level to the story.
doesn't it?
Yeah. Then there's the story of Jesus in Surah 5,
Oh, yeah.
where his disciples ask him if Allah could send down a table of food from heaven.
That's an interesting one.
It really makes you think about their faith.
And their priorities.
What's the deeper message there?
It reminds us to prioritize spiritual nourishment.
Over material desires.
Right, the disciples' request.
It seemed innocent enough
It did, but it suggests a lack of trust
in Allah's provision,
and a focus on material things.
rather than the eternal.
Exactly.
It's a reminder to really examine our motivations
Yeah.
and to make sure our focus is on what matters.
Absolutely.
It's amazing how these teachings make you think. Like in Surah 2,
Yeah,
when people in paradise see all this abundance,
I
they
know.
say, this is what we were fed before.
right. What about it?
It makes you wonder about paradise, doesn't it?
It's a passage that's fascinated scholars for a long time.
Really?
Yeah. Some say its literal paradise will be like this life, but grander.
Okay.
Others say it's metaphorical. It's about recognizing the familiar.
But in a totally different realm.
Exactly. A realm we can't fully grasp.
So it's not just material abundance then.
It's more than that. It's contentment recognition.
A deeper kind of fulfillment.
That's the idea. The Quran describes a joy beyond our understanding.
What about those companions mentioned in Surah 2?
The ones in paradise.
Yeah, it says they'll be pure and holy.
It's interesting.
Right.
What does that mean?
Well, there are different interpretations.
Like what?
Some believe it refers to reuniting with righteous family.
In the afterlife?
Yes, spouses, family members.
Okay.
Others say it's about a broader community, all believers together.
Sharing in the blessing.
Exactly, a beautiful picture of harmony and connection.
I like that. Okay, so back to Surah 4,
Mm-hmm.
where Art speaks directly to Moses.
Making him Kalim Allah.
Yeah, what makes Moses so special?
Moses is a unique figure. He's considered one of the most important prophets.
Why is that?
Well, he received the Torah, led the Israelites out of Egypt.
That's true.
This communication with Allah on Mount Sinai
Yeah,
really cemented his role as a messenger, a divinely chosen messenger.
exactly. It shows the power of his message.
And speaking of prophets,
Yeah,
that story of Jesus in Surah 5,
the one with the table of food.
yes, his disciples ask for food from heaven.
It's a thought-provoking passage.
Makes you question their faith.
Right.
Right.
It does. It invites us to look at our own desires,
Are we focused on material things?
our spiritual nourishment.
The disciples' request.
Go on.
It makes sense on the surface,
It does.
but it shows a lack of trust, maybe,
Possibly they focus on the immediate.
instead of the
Sorry.
eternal.
Oh, right.
So we need to check our priorities.
Absolutely. Make sure we're focused on what truly matters.
Before we move on, I want to go back to this tension
What tension?
between human nature and righteousness.
Oh, right. We were talking about that.
The Quran is so insightful about human nature.
It really is. It gets us.
It acknowledges our capacity for good and bad.
And how we tend to stray.
We need guidance.
We do, like in Surah 4. It warns us about taking Satan as a friend. It's a powerful image,
It is about giving in to temptation.
letting negativity guide us.
So the Quran shows this struggle between good and evil.
Yes, both within us.
And in the world.
Exactly. Satan tempts us.
And Allah guides us.
Towards what?
Towards righteousness.
Yes, towards purity and virtue.
So it's not just about avoiding big sins.
No, it's about actively choosing good.
Seeking protection from those negative influences.
You got it. Recognizing them.
And consciously aligning ourselves with righteousness.
That's the key.
Now those hypocrites in Surah 9.
The ones who say one thing and do another.
Yes. Why do you think the Quran focuses on them?
I think it's a warning about insincerity.
Having hidden agendas?
Exactly. True faith is about alignment.
Inner beliefs matching outward actions.
Right. Hypocrisy creates this dissonance.
And it pushes us away from Allah.
It does. True piety is about being genuine.
So it's about more than just looking good.
It's about inner purity. Our actions should please Allah.
Not impress others.
Exactly. No need for worldly recognition.
It all comes back to submission to Allah's will.
It does, doesn't it?
It's a theme throughout these excerpts.
It is. What does that look like in practice, though?
That's a good question.
Submission or Islam?
Go on.
It's about recognizing Allah like a guide.
The ultimate authority.
Yes. Aligning our will with His.
Trusting in His wisdom.
Even what we don't understand.
That sounds hard.
It can be. It takes humility.
Letting go of our ego.
Embracing a path that's not always clear.
Or easy.
Right. Humility is crucial.
We need to admit we don't have all the answers.
And trust Allah's plan, even when it's challenging.
But it's not about being passive, is it?
No way. Submission is a choice.
An active choice?
Yes. We align our actions with Allah's guidance.
So we still have free will?
We do. But we try to make choices that please Allah.
Choices that reflect His will.
Exactly.
So it's a balancing act.
It is surrendering to a higher power.
While still taking responsibility.
That's the idea. We recognize Allah's power.
And our own agency in the world.
We make choices that show our submission.
And we live according to His teachings.
Exactly.
Okay, so as we wrap up this part of our deep dive,
Okay.
what should our listener be thinking about?
Well, I think it's important to remember that the Quran is more than just stories and rules.
It's a living text.
It speaks to the human
It
experience.
challenges us, makes us think.
And helps us find wisdom.
Wisdom that connects to our lives.
That's the goal.
So the Quran isn't just a historical document.
No, it's a guide, inspiration, wisdom for today.
It speaks to us now.
It does engage with it, question it,
Wrestle with it.
and find the meaning that speaks to you.
It reminds us that faith is a journey.
A continuous journey.
Of learning.
Reflecting and growing.
We seek understanding.
Cultivate virtue.
And live by the Quran's values.
So keep exploring.
Keep asking questions.
Keep searching for those insights.
Let these teachings shape your understanding of the world.
That's what it's all about.
And with that, we'll take a short break.
Sounds good.
Before we dive into the final part of our deep dive into the Quran, and we're back for our final look at the Quran, I gotta say this deep dive has been really eye-opening.
It's amazing, isn't it, how these excerpts just spark so many thoughts.
So many questions, so many insights.
It speaks to how rich these texts are. The Quran invites us to engage on so many levels.
To think about the meaning, the challenges, to find a wisdom that speaks to us.
Exactly. And you know one thing that really stood out to me?
What's that?
Is this emphasis on taking responsibility. It's not about blindly following.
You really have to understand the why. Make conscious choices.
It's about intentionality.
Not just going through the motions.
It's about sincerely wanting to please Allah, living a life that reflects His guidance.
Like with prayer and fasting.
Yeah, they're not just empty rituals.
They're about being mindful, disciplined, grateful.
Exactly. They help us connect with Allah on a deeper level.
Purify our hearts, become more self-aware.
And it's not just about individual piety either.
Right. The Quran also talks about social justice.
Compassion, ethical conduct in all parts of life.
It's about creating a just society.
Where the vulnerable are protected.
Everyone is treated fairly.
With respect, believers are called to make a difference.
So it's about taking our faith beyond ourselves.
Yes, into our communities.
Into the world, making a positive impact.
The Quran's message is both personal and universal.
It's about inner righteousness.
And creating a better society.
This brings us back to submitting to Allah's will.
It's a central theme, isn't it?
But what does that actually look like in our lives?
Well, submission Islam.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing Allah's guidance.
His authority.
Aligning ourselves with Him, trusting His wisdom.
Even when it doesn't make sense to us.
It takes humility.
Letting go of our ego.
Following a path that's not always easy or clear.
That sounds challenging.
It can be. We have to admit our limitations.
We don't have all the answers.
We trust Allah's plan, even when it's difficult for us.
But it's not passive, right?
Submission is an active choice. We're not giving up our free will.
We're making a conscious effort.
To align our actions with Allah's guidance.
So we still have choices.
But we try to choose what pleases Allah, what reflects His will.
So it's this balance.
Between surrender and responsibility.
We recognize Allah's power.
And our own ability to act in the world.
We make choices that show submission.
And we live according to His teachings.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the Quran,
Yep.
What final thoughts would you leave our listener with?
Remember that the Quran is alive. It's not just some old document.
It's a guide for us today.
It offers inspiration, wisdom, guidance for our lives.
It speaks to us now.
Engage with it. Ask questions.
Don't be afraid to wrestle with the ideas.
Find what resonates with you, what has meaning.
It's a reminder that faith is a journey.
A journey of learning.
Of reflecting.
And of growing.
So as you keep exploring these excerpts,
keep those questions coming.
Keep searching for those deeper insights.
Let these teachings shape you.
Shape your understanding of the world and your place in it.
Well said. I think that's a great place to end.
This has been a fascinating deep dive.
It really has.
I hope you enjoyed exploring the Quran with us.
Me too. I hope you keep learning and discovering.
That's all for this deep dive. Thanks for joining us.
It was a pleasure.